Okay, so I'm just putting down a little base for this demo on the Peony brushstrokes. So I've got some of that transparent brown oxide, and I've got a little, I put down some of that ultramarine blue, and I'm just doing this quick so that you'll be able to see the Peony going on there. And what I'm going to do is, in this little demo, is just kind of give you an idea of the Peony brushstrokes again, because it's a lot to take in when you're watching the full demo. There's a lot going on there, so I'm just going to kind of see if I can't just wipe out a little bit of paint where I have that, where I'm going to put a peony. And there, that's a little bit better. This is a canvas paper I'm painting on, so it's a little, it's quite absorbing. So anyways, I'm just putting down a little bit of that Indian yellow, like we did the other day. And I'm just, let me just bring up my reference photo here. Okay, so I'm going to just paint one of the peony flowers. So if I have all this this underpaint here, it gives me a lot to work with when I go and I start to apply the next layers. So with my brush strokes, I can work with that underpaint to make my brush strokes. I'm just thinking I want to use this brush here, this silver 8 flat, because it'll give me that broader, looser stroke. When I'm kind of just looking at the peony, I just want to kind of mark in. So I mark in some of those little brush strokes to kind of give you that frame of your peony. There's those kind of key petals that kind of outline the peony that I kind of take a look at. And so I kind of have the gist of it. And so for the edge, I kind of pull the paint, I'll take my brush and kind of, make those edges by you can get a lot of paint on your brush and kind of scoop it and just, kind of you see how I'm putting the paint on like that. That's one way. Now, when I'm just kind of getting those bigger petals in, I kind of just want to go as if, I'm feeling the edge of that peony. I'm seeing those peony petals coming around. And so I want to just kind of look at the direction of, how those are going. And I just kind of, oopsies, I got some of that underpaint in there. For the initial, and I'm making sure to kind of leave some of those. But I'm wrapping around. I might need to make a little darker underpaint color, so I'll just get a little more viridian and a bit of that transparent brown oxide. I'm just going to kind of, build in some of that. Maybe if it looks too cool, just add a little orange in there. But I'm just going to work with the way I see those petals in my reference photo. In the beginning, I kind of I'm getting that base layer of paint down too, so there's not a lot of detail work yet. So I'm gonna just I kind of just take my brush and I can just get that paint down, but I kind of also am looking at how the peony has the way the petals flow. So they kind of come around, and then they all kind of wrap around and come in. So I'm kind of paying attention to that and the different angles. So this main petal here, I get a little white and a little bit of orange and kind of make a real thicker white brush stroke. So for that one, I'm looking at the direction of that. I'll try not to block the camera, but I'm wrapping it around that way, and then, you know, a petal that's coming here, it kind of comes up and starts to curl back into the center. So, you know, I'll get a little more paint here, and I'll wrap it around that way. So I'm looking at a few things, kind of the size of the brush stroke and the direction of the brush stroke, and then of course, you know, the color. So, and then, you know, the key kind of shapes. So I'll get a little bit of that blue, and a little bit of that cad red, and I'll kind of make that, and maybe a little dab of that transparent red oxide. So if I take a little cad red and some cobalt blue and some of that red oxide, I'm just gonna, you know, work in some of these petals that are a little cooler, and can bring this one out a little more. And so there's kind of, in the beginning, I'm more interested in kind of building up to those final brush strokes. I'm getting in the color and the shape, and then you'll see the, you know, the final brush strokes are a little more loose and free. But in the beginning, I'm kind of just using this square brush, and I'm just looking at my reference photo, and I'm kind of just blocking in, first of all, the value pattern, sort of like, okay, I've got, this is, you know, the light here on this side, and then I've got these cooler, warmer shadow colors there. And then, so I want to look and see if I got the shape I want. This comes a little lower, so I kind of look at my reference photo, and I look at the actual angle of the flower, and I place my brush, and then I look, there's another angle, and I'm going to place my brush and just kind of pull it up, so I get that, the shape I want, without having to, you know, sit and fuss with it. I'm just going to look at the flower, look at where I see the edge, and you know, how does that petal line up to this petal, and the space in between, you can really see, okay, that there's sort of a, you know, triangular shape there, and then there's another space between these two petals. So you kind of have to just look, and then I can even you know, I'll go back and put in some of that darker green just to show you what I'm looking at, those negative spaces when I'm putting those brush strokes in. You know, I'm taking a look at when I put that stroke in, I'm looking at my reference of my peony, and I'm really kind of paying attention to it just to get that, the angle of the brush stroke right, so that it kind of matches the angle of the flower, you know, petal. So once I kind of have the shape I want, I see that, you know, if this comes in a little more, this is going to come up here a little higher. So I'm looking, you know, this petal curves like this, so I'll kind of just go with that, you know, and I'll put that curve in there. You know, that's what I'm looking at when I'm putting in those brush strokes. Now, once you kind of have that base, then you know, you have a little more freedom to ad lib a little. So when you're looking at this peony, your reference photo, you'll see all kind of like there's a whole pile of kind of mid-tone value. There's all this light hitting the side. And when I get into that, then it's like, it's kind of more imagination, because I'm not going to paint and I can't even see enough of all those little petals in there. So that I'll take some, you know, some white and some Indian yellow and maybe a little, let's see, red oxide and just a tiny hint of the viridian, and red oxide, just to kind of darken it a little. And for that stroke, I'm just kind of gonna, you know, I'm gonna see that there's these tips of the, you know, the peony showing, and I'll sort of, I'll put a stroke down like this, but then I can come in, and if I want to lighten it a bit, I can always add a little more paint on the edge. But there's a bunch of, you know, curving, kind of swirling, it's all coming to the center there. So you can kind of, and I can do it with a smaller brush, maybe that's better to show you. But I'll take, you know, some of that lighter white and just, you know, put in using, I go back and get more paint because I want it to stand out. But for those, you can kind of, you know, just kind of look at your reference photo and just kind of, I'm always kind of bending it to the way I see it in the photo. So I'm looking at the direction, and I really just, you know, near the end, I will kind of just make sure I'm getting those, you know, those brush strokes in just with, I use a lot of paint too. So this petal curling over, I'm going to take my brush, and it starts thin and it kind of goes thick and wraps around. That petal's curling, and the light kind of carries over. And so I'm just, you know, I'll come up on the edge with a lot of paint and just kind of grab that edge out there. And same with these ones. I'll get, you know, a more bluey white highlight for these ones down here. And I'm just kind of pulling out some of the details. And I use quite a bit of paint. You'll see for the edges, I'll get a lot of paint and just kind of, you know, make sure that really shows. So it's trickier to describe because you're kind of ad-libbing a little as you go. But, you know, the main thing is that you kind of get the basic, some of those peony in the outline of it, some of those shapes, because that's what really, you know, you can really tell it's a peony with some of those, the way those petals look, you know, compared to other flowers. And now I'm just kind of going back in with my brush and making sure some of those shadows really, you know, I've got some of those deeper shadows, and I'm just kind of using my brush stroke there is just basically kind of going with the flower, the way the natural petal goes. And I'm just kind of sneaking back in some of those darker values. And I'm going to add a little orange to warm it up. So, and then I can, this edge here kind of curls. So I've just got a lot of paint on the side of my brush, and I'm just gonna, you know, pick out some of those details like that. And now this, and then as I go, I'll add some more of those petals. You know, you can just kind of add a few, and that's just, you know, I'm just using my brush and pulling the paint up. Not too, I'm kind of going against in the initial brushstroke I was kind of going that way, but then now I'm just kind of adding some highlights, so I'm going on the individual petal. I'm just kind of still trying to create that natural curve that they have. So you'll see I kind of, looking at my reference photo, I'm keeping the, you know, the natural direction that the petals, you know, are going, and you can always get a little more Indian yellow, and you can work back in some shadows there. So yeah, I think you'll see I kind of use these, you know, a push and pull brush stroke, you know. Sometimes I bring it from the inside of the flower out, like this. And sometimes if I want a highlight to come in, I'll bring it from the outside and really lift off so I don't drag too much of it back in to the flower. So, and then this is an edge that's curling over, so I bring that over and, you know, stop it there. And same with this one's curling over, so I can't really do the same thing that I did here because that's showing it going right off the page. So you just kind of have to look at what's kind of going on with the flower. You'll get used to how you show those edges and what brush stroke you're going to use for the edge. So I'm just gonna, a little bit of shadow got lost in there. Just get some Indian yellow and some of that red oxide and just kind of, you know, put a little bit of that back in there. You know, and that kind of shows off your petals. If you get too much white there and you want to kind of go back in, just get a little, I'm just using a little Indian yellow and some of that transparent brown oxide, just kind of putting back some of those shadow colors. And, you know, right in the center, if I put a little red oxide and then put some of the yellow there, those kind of give you the idea of those little, you know, those little stamens that come out of a real peony. So that's kind of how I did the peony flower, and I could just put a few bright highlights on those edges just for fun. So you can kind of just see how I, you know, play around with that. And another thing you can do with your brushwork on the edges is you can get a little of that sap green, some, you know, transparent brown oxide, and some of the peonies have some of those nice kind of edges that are a little bit split, you know, they kind of have, and so I can cut in some of those, you know, those little edges that they have that also gives it that more kind of peony effect. So I hope that helped, and I'll go over quickly one more time the brush stroke that I use for the leaf. So if I get a little sap and some cad yellow light, and I just I'll take my brush and put it down and pull it. I'm pushing down, and then I'll twist my brush like this. And I'll do the same. You know, I'll put my brush down and, you know, pull it away and, you know, kind of twist it to the edge for a peony petal. And it gives you kind of a instant, you know, leaf effect.